Can you hear me at the back? Yeah, thank you. It's very noisy in this environment, isn't it? But good afternoon, welcome to this presentation, Integrating Marketing, the Holy Grail of marketing. And what I want to try and get across this afternoon is that there's lots of things you need to do integrated marketing. Now, I've been going to these type of trade shows probably since the late 1990s. So I started in digital in 1996. So I've been coming to this type of thing for many, many years. And in fact, this was one of the first trade shows I came to back in the 90s. And you can see we were a bit more formal back then. But not much has changed. We go to these sort of events, we go around the stands, we're sort of looking for inspiration, we're looking for ideas. And I think the one thing that we're all trying to do is this idea of integration. And I'm sure you're very familiar with the concept. The idea is that as a brand, as an organization, we put our brand in the center, and then we try and build this integrated, seamless experience for the customer. And we design a customer experience with all these different touch points, and we move them along a conversion journey towards the ambitions and the goals that we have. Now, back in the late 90s, it was actually fairly straightforward to do that type of thing. There weren't that many techniques to know about. So again, back in the 90s, search engine optimization, maybe a bit of email marketing and website design, and a bit of offline. As the sort of decades have moved on, and I've been coming to these things, as I say, for nearly 20 years, there's another thing to do, and another thing to do, and another thing to do. So there's always more and more things for you to do as an organization to get that integrated marketing experience. And I think what we all feel, and I don't know about you guys, but I certainly feel that this pace of change with digital is just incredible, and there's this huge pressure to do more and more and more. And I think one of the challenges for us as marketeers and as digital marketers is we tend to become a bit spread too thin. Would you agree? We're just doing so many things, and what we're tending to do is doing lots of things, but none of them very well. Now, when you talk about the speed of change, we all sort of agree that things are picking up in terms of speed, and it's how do you actually make that tangible? Because it's one of those things that we all agree, we all think that things are picking up speed, but how do you actually demonstrate that speed of change? So I've got an image here that you may have seen before, and it's obviously a composite image. So we've got crowds waiting for the announcement of the next Pope in St. Peter's Square in Rome. And you can see at the top image, 2005, which is not that long ago. People are standing around patiently, presumably they've got cameras, a few of them. And there's a guy in the bottom right of that shot there that's holding up what we'd probably see as quite an old-fashioned phone now, It's probably a Nokia, which tells you something. And then you just look to, obviously last year now, 2013, but just a gap of 8 years, and everybody has got a smartphone. So can I ask you to lift your smartphone up if you've got it in your hands, please? You see, you never even let these things out of your hands. Okay, thank you. You're never more than about 4 feet away from your phone. It's probably your diary, it's your camera, it's everything, isn't it? It's your life. So to demonstrate that speed of change, look what's happened in just 8 years. Now, you're looking at that photograph at the bottom and presumably thinking it's nothing unusual, there's nothing different about that world, but that time frame is absolutely nothing. So that speed of change is absolutely genuine, that speed of development is absolutely real. The trouble is for us as marketeers, I think the challenge for us is that it's that overwhelming sense of all these different things to do. So there's a survey that came out last year now, and they asked 600 marketeers in Europe and the USA how they felt about marketing and how they felt about digital marketing, and they put all their responses into a word cloud. Now, is there a word that jumps out at you when you see this image? Okay. So this pressure on all of us. Now, I think a lot of those things, a bit like the Emperor's New Clothes, it's almost like I feel overwhelmed with all these things I've got to do, but it can only be me. So would you mind being honest, and do you feel overwhelmed with digital? Can you put your hand up if you feel a bit overwhelmed with digital? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I certainly do, and as I say, I think that's that pressure that we have now to do more and more, and probably one of the reasons why as integrated marketing doesn't quite often work, because we're just spread too thin. So how do we get around that? Well, ironically, what I'd suggest to you is, as things pick up in terms of speed, and as things become more complicated, we actually need to slow down and think more. And I think that's often what's missing in some of the sort of marketing that I see working with organizations is there's a huge pressure just to do things. Just do things. And actually, for many people I work with, they need to stop a little bit more often, to reflect, to take a breath, and actually to plan a bit more carefully than they actually do. But there's definitely a culture in lots of places I work where doing that would be seen as being wasteful. I was talking to somebody just a while ago, and she said that if I booked a meeting room and took an hour out to do some thinking, people would think I was actually wasting time. So a few people nodding at the front here. There's this culture of just do things quickly, do things. Now, obviously, I've got a huge amount of time this afternoon, to talk about the things you need to plan. But in my experience working with clients over the last sort of 20 years, there were 3 key areas that you need to think about, more in depth possibly than we currently do, to get that integrated marketing. So obviously at a very high level, those 3 areas that interlinked are people, processes, and technology. And for many organizations that I work with, and when we talk with organizations on the We Are Squared program, is where they're very much focused is on that bottom circle. They're very tech focused with their marketing these days, which is completely understandable. You have to have the technology, you need to understand the technology, but to be successful as an organization in marketing, you need to think about your people and your processes and your technology. And what I suggest to you is many organizations that I work with, those 2 areas, the top 2 circles, people and processes, haven't actually been thought through in as much depth. So what I want to do, again, at sort of 1,000 miles an hour here, is just, let's talk about what do I mean by that? What do I mean by those 3 interlocking areas? So starting with the people side of it, obviously this is what it's about. I think we forget as digital people that in the end what we're trying to do is serve other people with our products and services. And to do that thing properly, we need motivated, inspired people who know what they're doing. But of course, the most important person that we have to think about is the customer. And your customer these days is, as I'm sure you're very aware, is much more empowered, much more informed, much more technical, has much more choice than they ever had before. And I think one of the challenges for us is very often what you have is, as an organization, is you are a group of people that may not be the people that you're trying to reach. So I work with a highly educated graduates, marketing graduates, who are trying to reach people who are not of that demographic. They don't belong to that demographic. And then when you look at some of the stuff that goes online, some of these people will actually respond to their contemporaries more than they will to you, because those contemporaries have that sort of understanding of their world. So, for example, my daughter is 12, and the videos that she likes to watch on the web are of other 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds, So one of the challenges I think as marketeers is we tend to come up with this idea of personas. Can you put your hand up if you've heard of the word personas, please? Thank you. So a few of you, lots of you have. And I think personas are really good if they're based on evidence. So I'll work with clients very often, and they'll say, okay, who are you trying to reach? And they'll give a name to this imaginary person. So I was working with somebody yesterday, and they're trying to reach a lady they call Morrison's mom. Okay, Morrison's mom. And we're digging around and say, well, how do you know about this person? And it was just a projection of that person. It was just a sort of made-up character. So really what we have to do these days is our customers do not have to engage with us on the web. They don't have to follow us on Twitter. They do not have to read our blogs or follow us on Facebook. Only if we give them something of value. And the only way we're going to do that is if we truly understand them, rather than just project and make up an image about them. So understanding the customer is absolutely essential, and we must make sure that we're genuinely understanding the customer rather than what we think those people are like. The other thing we've got to do for the customer is focus on better quality products and experiences. Now, you probably know this is Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, who knows a thing or two about being successful in business. And he says, he's quoted as saying that in the old days, before the internet, you could spend 70% of your budget on promotion and marketing and 30% of your budget on the product. You can't get away with that anymore. And he's now saying what you need to do as organizations is spend far more money on product development, customer experience, and 30% on promotion. And Harvard Business School did some research where they found that 67% of organizations provide okay or average service. 30% provide poor or bad service, and only 3% provide outstanding or exceptional service. Now, as an organization, where are you in that? Are you in the 60, 70% providing okay or average? Are you providing the bad service or actually providing outstanding service? And what I tend to find is organizations who are focused on exceptional customer services and products and experiences, they tend to find that their marketing's done for them. Because who does their marketing for them? Their customers. So are you absolutely wowing your customers, or are you just providing okay or average service? Which is it? So we need to focus much more on the product these days than we ever did. We can't get away with average. The other area of understanding people is the psychology of how people act online. Now, there's a ton of research out there now, an increasing body of research that demonstrates why people do what they do on the web. So I've just listed just 3 here. You may be familiar with some of these. Contagious by Jonah Berger, The Science of Sharing by Karen Nelson Field, a fantastic book, Grouped, by a guy called Paul Adams, who was very senior at Facebook. And so again, working as a team, you don't have to do this on your own now. There's tons of research out there that tells you how people work on the web, what they do, why they do what they do over there. People being people. So you don't have to just sit around trying to work out how to make things viral on your own or make things successful on the web. People have worked it out for you. So in a sense, what we're becoming as marketeers is almost like psychologists as well. And what that research can tell us is, why do some of the things that work digitally? What happens? What makes them so successful? Now, this is obviously the Ice Bucket Challenge. Did anybody take part in the Ice Bucket Challenge? Can you again put your hands up, please? You took part in the Ice Bucket Challenge, thank you. We're going to do it again in a moment, so I hope you're okay with that. They're going to come around with the bucket in a moment, so thank you. But I think it was 1 in 6 UK population took part in the Ice Bucket Challenge, okay? 1 in 6. Now, most of us would give our right arm for a digital success of that level, wouldn't we? Now, you're probably never going to get that level of engagement, but you can learn from these things. You can take some of these ideas and actually sort of adapt it for what you're trying to do. Again, you're never going to get the same level of engagement as that, but you can certainly understand this sort of stuff. So understanding your customers, understanding what they do online, providing amazing products and services, that's what it's really about. The other areas of understanding people is recruiting the best talent. Recruiting the best talent in the best way. Now, there's a great book out about Google called How Google Works. You've got this guy smiling at the front here. Recruiting the best. Recruiting the best. There's a book by Eric Schmidt and Jonathan Rosenberg, which is about how Google works. And if you ever read anything about how Google have been successful, they're obsessed about recruitment. They spend a fortune on recruitment, and they recruit the very best people that they can, and then they look after them. And not only do they spend a lot of money on recruitment, but everybody is involved in recruitment. They make a big strategic decision in terms of recruitment. But also what you find is that we still recruit in sort of 19th century techniques. So the research suggests that the interview is the worst predictor of job performance. Did you know that? The interview. There's some evidence that 47% of people who are hired within 1 year are underperforming. And that's because a 1-hour interview is not enough to learn what that person's actually like in the job. Yet you look at how most organizations work in the 21st century, how do they recruit people? It's through the interview. So here we are as 21st century digital companies, and we're using 19th century recruitment practices. So we need to understand how to recruit, we need to understand recruit the best people, and how we actually get them on board. The trouble is, of course, see what I've done there? Talent gap? No, never mind. There is a huge talent gap, a skill shortage when it comes to digital skills, certainly in the UK. There is a massive need for people who understand digital, they understand all these channels, they understand all these technologies. What I suggest to you is you can never have somebody who understands all of this stuff. It's just too big to know everything, isn't it? So you need your specialists, and maybe you need your generalists who can actually have that strategic view. So you're going to struggle to recruit. So often the very best thing to do is to educate the people that you've got. Now again, you can tell I'm sort of representing We Are Squared here today, but I think what I find, again, working with lots of teams is, they're like, we're doing all this stuff, we've got this huge responsibility, I've never been given any training. I'm on my own here, I'm all self-taught, I'm reading a blog over here or a Twitter feed over there, I'm reading somebody's article on how to do it on YouTube or something. People are doing all this stuff, often without any formalized training at all. Now, of course, self-learning is some of the best form of learning, but I think it's really important that if you're going to ask your team to do great digital marketing, you need to provide them with that educational support. Don't you think? Now, the programs like We Are Squared, it doesn't just have to be We Are Squared, obviously I'd recommend it to you, but giving guys the chance to step back from their day-to-day jobs, giving them that structured learning, will make a difference to your marketing. The other part of people for successful marketing is the culture that you have in your organization. Now again, it's easy for me to say, and culture is one of those things that is hard to pin down, but what sort of culture do you have in your organization? Is it a culture where people are allowed to experiment? Are they allowed to try new things? Are they allowed to have ideas and have innovation? Or is it a culture where you're not allowed to fail? Because again, what digital can be is highly creative, we can do different things, we can do novel things. Often when you look at organizations, they never try anything new because they're not encouraged to. So culture comes down to, I don't know, there's obviously a classic Google office there. And if you've ever been to any sort of Google buildings, you know that they actually do look like that. They don't just have one room where they take a photograph and then everybody else works in little small cubicles. The environment that they set up for these sort of places is deliberately this way. And why are they doing that? It looks expensive, and we could cram another, most organizations would look and think, you could cram another 20 people in there. But you're sending a signal to the people that work with you to say, look, we want you to do your best here. We want you to do the best marketing that you can. We want you to enjoy your jobs, because if you enjoy your jobs, you're happy at work, you're going to be more productive, you're going to do more interesting marketing. So this is an important thing, and in the end it comes down to, and I'd ask you as well, it comes down to leadership. It comes down to the people, not just at the top, but all the way through the organization. Are they actual leaders of people that inspire people, that get people to actually do their best at work? Or are they, you probably know the term hippo. Do you know the term hippo? Put your hand up if you come across the term hippo. Hippo, thank you. Highest paid person's opinion. Highest paid person's opinion. And most organizations are still quite top-down, hierarchical places, and it depends on what the boss wants, depends on what the senior person wants, and that's what we do. Now with digital, of course, what we should do is use the data. We should let the data speak, and we'll say, well, let's do what the data suggests that we should do. That's how we should operate. But again, surprisingly, we're in the 21st century, we're using 19th century recruitment methods, and we're using 19th century factory model management methods. Now again, it's not easy for you just to wave a magic wand and change all those things, but I think this is some of the reasons why organizations do not achieve the success with marketing that they look for. So people, it is the most important thing. The second area that you need to look at to do successful digital marketing these days is process. And again, many of the people I work with, their processes are broken. And in fact, they actually don't often have any processes. Now, because there's so many things to do with digital, you need to have the opportunity to step back and to join the dots. You cannot work in silos anymore. You cannot work in disparate teams who don't talk to each other. The irony is, often now as organizations, we're supposed to have a conversation with the customers. You come across that idea, a conversation with the customers? We don't even talk to ourselves. We don't even tell each other what we're doing. So we need organizations that information flows smoothly across the organization, everybody's on board, everybody understands the strategy, and as an organization, we're efficient with our processes. So digital is supposed to be iterative, it's supposed to be quick. To build a website takes months. To change a web page for most organizations takes weeks and weeks and weeks, because they go around in circles. So what we do ideally need in an ideal world is to look at how we do marketing and design it to be as efficient as we can. And of course, that efficiency is designed to build, and I know it's a bit old-fashioned and it's a bit cheesy, but what we're trying to do with all these techniques is to nudge the customer along, is design that conversion funnel and make sure all the pieces work hand in hand. They're efficiently moving people along that conversion journey. We need to design this. So I'll give you a classic example, working with many websites. What do you want the client to do when they come to your web page? Well, look around. Okay, what else do you want them to do? Oh, get in touch. So how are you engineering that? How are you designing that? And of course, modern marketing, modern integrated marketing is supposed to be agile. Again, could you put your hand up if you think your organization is agile marketing, please? First of all, have you heard the term, please? Put your hand up. A few people have heard the term, thank you. Can you keep your hand up if you think your company has agile marketing? People are doing that, thank you. So again, agile marketing is this idea of willing to try things out, willing to experiment, to test things, to learn, to test, to use data, to get better and better. That's agile. Most organizations, because they have that old-fashioned culture, they're not willing to try. It's too dangerous to try new things. And in the end, what agile is about, I suppose, is being experimental. Is willing to say, I don't actually know if this is what will work. Why don't we put an experiment together? We'll see what the results are, and then we'll use the data to inform our next step. That's what we're supposed to do with digital. That's the opportunity with digital. It's rare to see. Now, I'm just pointing out here is we know this is what we should do. It won't actually happen if we don't plan for this. I think the other thing in terms of process, there's lots of evidence now to how you can be innovative, how you can come up with new ideas. You need to explore how you can become more innovative as a company, more innovative in your marketing. And again, unless you recognize there's a need for innovation, it doesn't happen by accident. And what you'll often hear is, I wish they were more innovative. So again, your staff, your team need to be trained to be more innovative. It is possible to break out of that sort of narrow thinking. Not easy, but possible. And of course, what we end up with digital is tons and tons and tons of numbers. Tons of data, tons of metrics. Metrics are empowering. Metrics allow you to do your job better, don't they? So part of what you're going to plan is an analytics culture. You want your team to respect numbers, you want your team to be excited by numbers, and you need people who've got the authority to do something about them. Because the problem is, if all you do with data is report it, it should be called reportalytics or trackalytics. It's called analytics because we're supposed to analyze it. So again, we all know this. We all instinctively think this is what you're supposed to do. It rarely happens properly. So what we've got is all these numbers. We know we should do something with them, but because we haven't designed processes to do something with them, they just tend to get reported and nothing happens. So I say, huge areas to talk about, people and processes, designing these things. But if you want integrated marketing, this is what you're going to have to do. So the final area I said that you have to think together is the technology. Now this entire show, you've probably been to several shows like this, you read stuff on the web, you see stuff on Twitter. It's all about the technology of digital, isn't it? Like going back to my first point, there's so much to think about. Search, display, native advertising, mobile marketing, social media, and so on and so on. And again, obviously I'm not here to talk about all these things individually. The ethics, for example, of digital, I think that's a growing area. The growing concerns about privacy, what the legislation bodies are going to do in terms of privacy. Huge areas for us to understand as organizations, most of which of these things have only just begun. So as I sort of finish off here, we're obviously in a social world. And what social means is not just having a Twitter account, Social doesn't mean just having a Twitter and a Facebook page. Social is an organizational culture where we want to have a conversation with the customers, a genuine, authentic, two-way dialogue with the customers. We can't pay lip service to this anymore. And we can't just give it to the intern because she's young. You're a young person, go and do social. Social cuts all the way through the organization, or at least it should. You're obviously very familiar with the idea that we're in a mobile world. And we need to plan as organizations how we move away from the desktop world, the way that we still see the digital almost like as a desktop experience, even laptop experience. We're down to the mobile world. You need to have this mobile first strategy. start from the mobile device, and then work outwards. So the last few minutes really for me, this has just begun, this stuff. The technology of digital, the technology marketing has only just started. So you're probably familiar with the idea of the beacons. I think beacon technology, the Internet of Things is going to be huge, particularly in B2C, retail environments, but this type of technology will cut across all areas, I guarantee it. I really do think this is going to be a massive step change in lots of things. Of course, the other thing that's going to change the internet, it's going to change digital, it's going to change marketing, is we've had it all our own way in the West for the last sort of 15, 20 years of the web, haven't we? Up until the last sort of few years, really, the web has been a Western, English language dominated place. And I think the way that we do digital, perhaps in the West, it reflects that culture that we live in. As the rest of the world, and thank God they're coming onto the web, as they come onto the web, they're going to change the way we do things. And I think we're going to see new players. I mean, Alibaba's flotation just recently, you know, there are going to be new organizations, new ways of doing things digitally that we probably can't even imagine yet because they're not from our culture. That's going to change digital again. We're going to be in a wearable world. Obviously, representing Google Wheel Squared, you know, maybe it'll be Google Glass, maybe you're sitting here in a few years' time having your glass. Has anybody signed up to the program for it, please? Anybody? I've signed up for it. I'm not wearing it yet. They haven't sent it in the post yet, but whether it will be a Google Glass or whether it be an Apple Watch or something, this is coming. And this is going to change things. How is this going to change it with your organization, the way you interact with your clients and customers? Now, the guys over in the corner there, anybody seen, have got an Oculus Rift? Wow. Now, if you've not tried this, the guys, I'll probably form a queue after this. The guys have got an Oculus Rift where you can actually do this 3D virtual reality thing. This, I think, again, will be absolutely enormous. Will your customers interact with you in 2, 3, 4 years' time in a virtual environment? Will they buy your products and services using virtual reality? Seriously, how will that change how you do marketing? How will that change the way you do digital? Start thinking about this now. And of course, 3D printing. And you look at that and you think, seriously, would I sit there would you be excited about your next mug being printed? But remember, there were predictions that said people would not have a personal computer in the home, okay? People then said that you wouldn't have a personal printer in your home. Could you put your hand up, please, if you've got a personal printer at home, please? Yeah, I mean, who hasn't? So, will we all have 3D printers in the future? Yeah, somebody's got one now, I think. Think this through. This is going to change things again. And the final one in terms of technology is artificial intelligence. I don't know if anybody's seen Grid.io, I mean, obviously big promise. If you're not seeing this, this is a software technology where websites will design and build themselves. And the idea of this is that the site, over time, using artificial intelligence, machine learning, will just start changing itself and optimizing itself without human intervention. So all we're going to do as organizations, if we're not careful, is we're just going to pick these tools up. We're going to get very excited about them, and we'll just play this game of Jenga, you know? But what we have is a responsibility as marketeers, as digital marketeers, to look forward and extrapolate and say, change has actually just started with digital. We've only just really begun with this world. I know I said I've started this stuff since 1996. I seriously think we're taking baby steps with this. We're just at the beginning of this. This is not fixed. This is not finished. It's really exciting industry to be in because it's actually just begun. So, final thought for me then. Really what digital is about, what digital marketing is about, is, to misquote Darwin, it's not the strongest that survive, nor the most smart. It's the ones who are most adaptable to change. And that's really what the message of this entire last sort of 15, 20 years has been about, and certainly over the next 15, 20 years will be about. It's not whether you've got the latest tech or the latest, smartest thing, it's whether you're adaptable and you can change to the new environment. So seriously, if you want to have integrated marketing, if you want to achieve that holy grail of integrated marketing, don't just think about the tech, think about the people side of things, design those processes, put them together with the tech, and maybe then you will find your holy grail of integrated marcoms. Thank you very much.